So, what actually happens to our bodies and our minds when we pray? It's a question that brings together two worlds that you might not expect: ancient spiritual practice and modern cutting edge science. Today, we're going to dive into the surprising health dimensions of the Muslim prayer, which is known as Salah.
For literally centuries, prayer has been this absolute cornerstone of faith. But get this, now scientists are jumping in, armed with all sorts of modern tools, and they're asking this really compelling question. What are the measurable, physical, and psychological effects of this practice on our health?
Okay, so before we can really get into the research, we have to start with the practice itself. What is it exactly that scientists are putting under the microscope here? And here's the key thing to understand. Salah isn't just, a quiet mental thing. As you can see, it's this highly structured routine that involves both the mind and the body. And it's done multiple times a day. It's that unique combination that makes it so fascinating for researchers. This slide really breaks down that physical cycle so well. Every prayer is made up of a sequence of these postures. You go from standing, that's qiyam, to this deep forward bow, ruku, and then all the way down into full prostration, which is called sujood. And it's each one of these specific movements that's now being looked at for its biomechanical and physiological impact.
All right, so we've got the physical side down. Now let's switch gears and talk about the mind. How does a practice like this actually build mental resilience? What is the research really showing us?
Well, what they're finding is pretty amazing, and it's incredibly consistent. I mean, they've looked at all sorts of groups, from students who are totally stressed out about exams to people managing long-term illnesses. And Salah just keeps showing up as this powerful coping mechanism. The results point to less anxiety, better control over your emotions, and even a bigger sense of optimism. Some studies even suggest it helps release endorphins, our body's own natural feel-good chemicals.
Now, this is where it gets really cool, because we can actually see that feeling of calm in our biology. Researchers have found that during prayer, there's this measurable shift happening in our nervous system. Activity in what's called the sympathetic system, that's our fight or flight response, it goes way down. And at the same time, the parasympathetic system, our rest and digest mode, it ramps up. This means your heart rate slows down, your blood pressure stabilizes, your body basically gets the signal to just chill out. And here's the real kicker. This isn't just about feeling calm. The research makes it pretty clear that these mental and emotional states are not just feelings at all. They're deeply connected to real, tangible, physical changes that are happening all through the body.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty. How does this all actually play out physically? What's going on in our bodies, from our brain waves down to our muscles and our joints when we're praying? Using the EEGs, which measure brain activity, scientists have actually seen a shift in brain wave patterns during prayer. They're seeing a big jump in alpha waves. Think of that super calm, reflective state you're in right before you fall asleep. And at the same time, they're seeing more gamma waves, which are linked to intense focus and higher consciousness. It suggests the brain enters this really unique state of what you might call calm alertness.
Of course, good science is all about the details. For example, one study looked at the pressure inside the eye, and they found this tiny, statistically significant increase of about 3.5 millimeters of mercury right after the prostration posture. But, and this is super important, they also noted that this change was not clinically significant. In other words, it wasn't big enough to be a problem for healthy people. It just goes to show you how precise these investigations are getting.
And honestly, the list of physical findings just keeps growing. That bowing posture, ruku, has been shown to improve hamstring flexibility. We already talked about the good stuff it does for your pulse and blood pressure, but get this. Biomechanical engineers are actually studying the prayer movements to design better, more durable hip replacements so that a patient's spiritual life isn't disrupted after surgery. How amazing is that?
But this research isn't just for academic papers. It has some profound, real-world consequences, especially in healthcare. So, why does all of this matter for doctors, nurses, and most importantly, for patients?
Well, think about it. For a lot of Muslim patients, not being able to perform their daily prayers because of an illness or old age or pain after surgery, that can cause a huge amount of psychological and spiritual distress. And this is where the research becomes a total game changer. As you can see from this table, it's helping doctors and therapists understand these very specific problems. That's leading to better ways to assess elderly patients, better rehab for people after surgery, and new strategies for folks with chronic conditions. It's all about making sure patient care is truly holistic.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second. What's the bigger picture here? What's the main takeaway from this growing body of work that sits right at the crossroads of faith, health, and science?
When you look at dozens and dozens of these studies all together, the emerging scientific consensus is pretty clear. As this quote puts it, Salah is now being understood not just as a religious ritual, but as a truly holistic exercise, one that weaves together the mind, the body, and the spirit in a way that measurably boosts our overall well-being.
Now, the point of all this research isn't to prove or disprove anyone's faith. That's not the goal. It's really about trying to understand a profound human experience through an objective scientific lens. And as we do that, it leaves us with this powerful question to think about. As we discover more and more about this incredible mind-body connection, how might the line between spiritual practice and health science start to blur?